The jungle had fallen into a strange silence, the kind that makes even the tallest trees seem like they are holding their breath. Birds that normally filled the canopy with endless chatter had vanished, and even the insects seemed hesitant to sing. In the middle of this uneasy calm stood a silverback gorilla, his dark eyes scanning the shadows between the trees, as if he could sense something no one else could. It was the silence before a storm, and invisible tension hanging in the air. But why would a mighty gorilla suddenly freeze in alertness, his chest rising with slow, deliberate breaths? And what kind of danger could silence an entire jungle that never sleeps? The answer was simple, yet terrifying. He wasn't afraid for himself, he was afraid for someone else. And the danger was not an ordinary predator, but a master of patience and ambush, a giant python lurking where no eye could easily see. The gorilla's nostrils flared as he inhaled the damp scent of the earth, mixed with something unsettling, a musk that signaled the presence of a predator. His massive frame stood motionless, each muscle tight as if carved from stone. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his broad shoulders, for behind him, hidden by leaves and shadows, were those who depended on his strength to survive. A faint rustle whispered from the undergrowth, almost inaudible, yet sharp enough for him to catch. His ears twitched, and his head turned slowly toward the sound. It was the kind of noise that no casual wanderer would notice, but for him it was as clear as thunder. He knew this forest as he knew the back of his hand, and something about that movement was wrong. Too slow, too deliberate, too deadly. He lowered himself slightly, his knuckles pressing into the soil and his deep brown eyes narrowed. The instincts passed down through generations screamed at him that a predator was near, one that did not move with the rhythm of the forest but against it. He could not yet see it, but he knew it was there, weaving silently between the ferns like a shadow come alive. The young ones behind him stirred restlessly, their small hands tugging at branches, their innocence blind to the threat. The silverback remained silent, his breath steady, not daring to give away a single sign of weakness. The jungle could be merciless, but it was also a place of balance. And right now that balance was under attack by something ancient and merciless. His heart beat slower, not faster, for panic was not in his nature. Instead, his body prepared itself like a coiled spring, every fiber tuned for the moment he would need to unleash his strength. He was not just a guardian by blood, but by choice, a leader bound to protect, even if it cost him his life. The silence pressed harder, almost suffocating, and he waited. The rustling stopped. For a moment it felt as though the jungle itself had vanished into stillness. The gorilla's gaze locked onto a patch of thick grass, his instincts telling him the truth before his eyes could confirm it. Somewhere within those shadows, a scaled body thicker than his arm was preparing to strike. And in that silence he knew the battle for survival was about to begin. From the thick grass the python emerged with a slow, dreadful grace, its scales glistening like polished armor under the fractured light. Its body slid across the soil with a sound so soft it felt like a whisper, but its size revealed a predator built for suffocation and death. The silverback's eyes sharpened, his massive chest expanding with steady breaths as he watched the serpent's coils unfolding, each one longer and thicker than the last. The python lifted its head, tongue flickering in and out, tasting the air heavy with tension. It wasn't after him at first, it was hunting smaller, weaker prey. Its gaze shifted toward the brush behind the gorilla, where the young ones waited without knowledge of the danger. The silverback stepped forward, placing himself between the predator and his family, his presence a wall of muscle and defiance. The serpent paused, its lidless eyes locked onto him, calculating. It had faced prey before, prey that fought, but never something like this. The gorilla lowered his head slightly, letting out a deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the air. It was not just a warning, but a declaration that nothing would pass him alive. His fists clenched into the dirt, pulling up roots as his body braced for the strike. The python lunged first, its speed shocking for its massive size, jaws opening wide enough to engulf the silverback's arm. But the gorilla was faster than it expected. He swung his enormous arm like a hammer, striking the serpent's head with a force that cracked the ground beneath them. Dust and leaves scattered as the two giants clashed, one fighting with coils and venomous jaws, the other with raw power and unshakable will. The impact stunned the python, but didn't stop it. Its body whipped around like a living rope, wrapping itself around the gorilla's torso. The silverback roared, the sound echoing through the trees, his muscles straining as the coils tightened around his ribs. Each breath grew harder, the weight crushing against his chest, but his eyes remained fixed on the brush where the young ones hid. He would not yield, no matter the pain. The gorilla grasped at the python's thick body, his fingers digging into its scales as he pulled with all his might. The serpent hissed, tightening further, trying to suffocate the strength out of him. The forest floor shook beneath their struggle, leaves and branches breaking under their combined weight. Every second became a battle of endurance, each one pushing the other closer to the edge. His roars grew louder, more primal, filling the jungle with a terrifying sound that warned everything within earshot. The young ones stopped moving, their wide eyes watching as their protector fought with everything he had. The python tried to shift its coils to his neck, to silence him forever, but the silverback slammed his body against a tree, pinning part of the serpent and forcing it to loosen. With one desperate surge of strength, the gorilla pried a section of the python's body free and pulled, tearing it away from his chest. The serpent thrashed wildly, striking at him again, but he met it with another crushing blow, his massive fists relentless. The ground was torn and bloodied, the air filled with the violent struggle of two titans. And still, neither showed signs of surrender. The python recoiled from the gorilla's crushing blow, its body snapping back with violent force, but the serpent was far from finished. It lunged again, wrapping its coils around his arm this time, trying to pull him off balance and drag him into the undergrowth. The silverback resisted, planting his feet deep into the soil, his muscles bulging as he pulled back with sheer strength. Their struggle shook the forest floor, sending leaves and branches raining down. Every motion was a clash of raw power, one built for constriction, the other for explosive force. The gorilla bared his teeth, his roar ripping through the air as he twisted his massive frame, slamming the python against the ground with bone-shaking impact. The serpent writhed but held firm, tightening its coils again. The silverback's chest heaved as he fought for air, his breath shorter under the crushing weight of the snake. His eyes burned with determination, not fear, and he swung his free arm with brutal precision, striking again and again. Each blow left deep impressions on the python's body, but its resilience was terrifying. The young gorillas whimpered in the shadows, unable to understand, yet feeling the terror of what unfolded. The python tried to drag him backward, its coils shifting to his legs, but the silverback's grip was unbreakable. He seized the serpent's thick body with both hands, muscles trembling under the strain as he tore the coil apart inch by inch. The snake hissed in fury, its mouth snapping at him, fangs grazing his shoulder, leaving shallow cuts that bled into his dark fur. Pain only fueled him further. He lifted the python off the ground, a display of raw dominance, before slamming it against a tree with such force the trunk cracked under the collision. The serpent loosened for a moment, but quickly recoiled, striking at his face. The gorilla dodged, countering with another violent strike that sent vibrations through the earth. It was a test of who could endure longer. The jungle around them grew frantic as birds erupted from the treetops, alarmed by the chaos. Smaller animals scattered, sensing the war between giants. Still, the silverback and the python remained locked in a deadly embrace, each refusing to surrender. The gorilla's knuckles bled from the effort, his breath rough, but his eyes stayed fixed on the small figures watching from behind the leaves. He could not fail them. He would not. With a surge of primal strength, the silverback forced the serpent's coils off his chest once more and pushed forward, driving the snake back across the clearing. The python thrashed, wrapping again around his legs, but this time he was prepared. He gripped its neck with both hands, his roar shaking the air as he wrestled for control. The struggle became a blur of motion, dirt flying, branches snapping, and blood staining the soil. Each second stretched like eternity, but still the silverback pressed on, refusing to let go. The serpent's hiss filled the air, but the gorilla's will was stronger. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle to protect the very life that hid behind him. The python's body writhed violently as the silverback tightened his grip around its neck, his massive arms trembling with strain. The serpent coiled tighter around his legs, pulling with crushing force, determined to bring him down. His breath came in harsh bursts, blood dripping from his shoulder wounds, yet his eyes blazed with unbroken resolve. The forest floor beneath them shook under their struggle. With a final surge of strength, the gorilla slammed the python against a rock, the sound echoing like thunder. The serpent hissed in agony, loosening its grip just enough for him to pull free one leg, but the escape came at a cost. Its fangs lashed out in desperation, piercing deep into his forearm. He roared in pain, the sound rolling through the jungle, but he did not let go. Blood seeped down his arm, staining the ground, yet he tightened his hold, ignoring the searing pain. His massive hands closed harder around the python's neck, cutting off its strength inch by inch. The snake thrashed wildly, its body slamming against trees, dragging both of them through dirt and leaves. Still, the silverback stood firm, every muscle screaming under the weight of sacrifice. His chest heaved, his vision dimming at the edges, but the thought of the small ones hiding behind him burned brighter than the pain. They needed him alive, they needed him victorious, even if his body would never be the same. He shifted his weight, driving the python's head into the earth with a force that cracked the soil, his roar shaking the silence that had gripped the forest. The serpent's movements slowed, its coils weakening, but not without one final desperate strike. Its tail whipped across his ribs, knocking the air from his lungs, leaving him gasping. His knees buckled for a moment, yet he refused to fall. Summoning the last of his strength, he lifted the python's body and slammed it down again, his power breaking through the predator's will. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sound of his labored breaths. The python lay stretched across the ground, its body still twitching, but beaten. The gorilla staggered, blood dripping from deep wounds, his chest rising and falling with painful effort. His victory was carved into his flesh, each scar a reminder of the price he had paid. He turned slowly toward the brush where the young ones had hidden, his eyes softer now, filled not with rage but with relief. They peeked out cautiously, their small frames trembling, until they saw him standing there, wounded yet unbroken. Their cries filled the air, not of fear but of recognition, and they rushed forward, clinging to his legs. The silverback lowered himself to the ground, his breath heavy, his body battered, yet he placed a gentle hand on the nearest young one. Pain radiated through him, but there was comfort in knowing they were safe. His battle had ended, but the scars on his body told the story of what it had taken to win. The silverback sat in the clearing, his breath rough and shallow, the ground beneath him stained with blood and broken leaves. Around him the forest slowly came back to life, as if recognizing that the danger had passed. Birds began to call again from the tree-tops, and the rustle of small creatures returned. Yet in the middle of it all the gorilla remained still, his massive chest rising and falling like waves after a storm. The young gorillas clung to him, their small hands pressing into his fur, their eyes wide with fear, but also with gratitude. They did not understand the weight of what had just happened, only that their protector had stood between them and death itself. His body carried the proof, deep gashes and bruises that would take time to heal, but his gaze held calm, as though the sacrifice was worth every wound. One of the smallest clambered onto his lap, pressing its face into his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The silverback shifted slightly, placing his massive hand over the little one, the same hand that moments ago had crushed against the serpent's body, now offering nothing but comfort. The jungle could be cruel, but within his presence safety still existed. He turned his eyes to the horizon, where the light of the sun broke through the thick canopy, warming the clearing. His wounds ached, yet he refused to let his body fall. The weight of being a leader was not only in strength, but in the willingness to endure pain for others. That burden was his alone, and he carried it without regret. The defeated python lay motionless nearby, its body stretched out as a dark reminder of how fragile life could be. The gorilla looked at it for a long moment, not with triumph, but with understanding. Every battle came with a cost, and even victory did not erase the scars left behind. His chest heaved with each breath, but his resolve was unshaken. The younger ones eventually released their grip, their fear replaced by a cautious energy as they began to move about the clearing. Their laughter returned, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. The silverback's eyes softened as he watched them, his lips pulling into something almost like a smile. Even in pain, their joy was his reward. The jungle accepted its balance once more, sounds returning in harmony, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed in those who had witnessed the struggle. They had seen the depth of their guardian's sacrifice, and though they could not speak it, they carried the memory of his courage in their hearts. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged in danger, and sealed in survival. Life is fragile, and strength is not only measured by power, but by the willingness to use it for those who cannot defend themselves. The silverback's battle was not just against the python, but against fear itself, a fight to protect what mattered most. In his sacrifice there was a lesson for all. True strength is found not in living for yourself, but in living for others. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many more are waiting to be told. Subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey of powerful true stories that inspire hope and compassion.